Hi, my name is Troy Higginson, and I want to share with you something that was so amazing that I experienced with my son. And you will get ideas if you listen to what I'm about to describe. The first time I heard about it was in a book called Raising a Modern Day Knight. And this group of men went through this book to figure out how to help their child become a man as they grew older, a man of God. And one of the sections was describing certain rites of passage and rites of passage into manhood. And I took one of those stories, and when I read it, I said, I have to do that when my kid gets old enough. And so I hope you'll listen to this because it's a really incredible idea that was from the book, and I think you'll profit from it greatly. And it doesn't matter what age your son is at. They may be really young right now, or maybe they're 21, but it's still not too late to think about doing something like this with your son. So let me share with you how it started. We were going up to a men's retreat up in McCall, Idaho, and my son wanted to go for the first time. He's just about 16, and this happened about a month ago. And I knew this was going to be the perfect opportunity to set up this rite of passage into manhood, because it's not something that typically we think about in our culture here in America, but I knew that this was going to be a significant time to do this rite of passage. And so we got up there. On the second day we were there is when everything was set up to take place. And it started out with a phone call from his good friend who had already prearranged to make the phone call. And his good friend who was about 5 years older than him got on the phone with him and said, Nathan, today's a very special day for you. Your dad has set up a rite of passage into manhood, and just keep an open mind. And it starts with this phone call with me, and when we're done, I will let you know what to do next. And so they had their phone call. It was really cool to watch from a distance, watching him as he was out on the deck overlooking the lake. And when he got off the phone call, he came back into the lodge, and the next person in line was my friend Curtis, who was going to take him on a walk. And so Curtis told him, hey, you're going to be outside for a while. You may want to change into some warmer clothes, which my son did. He went up to the cabin, changed, and then they went on their walk. And his assignment was to speak to Nathan about spiritual development and the importance of putting spirituality first in your life. And so he took him on a journey up the hill on this path into the woods. And then when he got done talking to him about the importance of putting spirituality first, which is kind of these four segments of what being a godly man is. And so he's talked about the segment of spirituality. And so when he got there, he told him, all right, stay here. They had a blanket, an outdoor blanket. He had Nathan set up and just said, hey, talk to God and see what he has to say to you. And so Curtis walked away down the pathway, and as he walked away, there was another person that was important to Nathan's life, and that was Douglas. And Douglas came out from the trail and started talking to Nathan and walking him back down the trail and talking to him about leading courageously. And so they walked down the hill. They had a conversation that took about 20 minutes or so, and he walked them to the cabin that we were staying at. And while they were gone, I had set up a table in that cabin and a chair and my computer with a note of what Nathan was to do next. So Douglas left them at the cabin after he had talked to him about leading courageously. And then Nathan went into the cabin. He sees the note and the video to play. And so he sits down and he starts watching this video. And it was from his school teacher who had made a big impact on his life. And he was, in his discussion, his pre-recorded video, he was talking about the need for Nathan to resist passivity as a godly man, to resist passivity. And so he spoke to him. Nathan watched that recorded video, and when he got done, there was a note on the table that said, you need to now go down to the canoe once you've watched the video, and there'll be a note for you there. So he finishes that video, he walks down to the shoreline, and there was a canoe waiting for him, and in the canoe was a letter. Now this letter was from his school teacher, who was he's a Bible teacher at his school. And in it, I'd asked the teacher, Ever, to write a letter about living your life Christ-centric. And so he wrote a beautiful letter, and so I had that in the boat, in the canoe, I should say. And as Nathan got there, he took the letter. I saw him, watched him sit down to read it, because I was watching from the lodge, from an upper window, to see kind of where Nathan was at. And so he read the letter. Then he took his shoes off and his socks off, because the lake was shallow there, and to get out you need to do that unless you want to get wet. So he did that. The note in the canoe told him to paddle across the lake to this island that was there at the lake, and to look for another canoe that was parked on the shore. So it's about a 20-minute paddle. So he put on his life vest, got the paddle out, and went across the lake to that spot. Once he parked his canoe out there, my friend Scott, who was the original organizer for Raising a Modern Day Knight, as far as a group to go through that content, he was out on the island. And he was there to talk to Nathan about another aspect of being a godly man, and that is to take responsibility. And so he was able to talk to him, speak into his life. He gave him a very special item that was important to him, meaningful to him. He gave that to Nathan, and so Nathan and Scott then canoed back across the lake to the shoreline. At the shoreline, Scott told me he needed to go to the bouldering shed, which was like a climbing wall in a shed there on the campus. And so Nathan went there, and I had a seat set up in there with a note on my phone for him to listen to a voicemail. And I'd already set it up for his grandpa Jerry to call and leave a voicemail about Nathan being prepared to have a family someday and to be the provider for the family. So he took my phone, and I was watching him now. I'll tell you where I was watching from here in a second, but he took the phone, he listened to the voicemail from his grandpa Jerry.
Nathan, your dad has asked me to say a few words to you about
took and read the note that said, now you need to go up to the treehouse. And so he then walked over to the treehouse, and when he came up the ladder that comes up through the trunk of the treehouse, you go up to the top, and it's an open platform with a railing that you can see the camp there, and it's just a really cool spot. And I was there, and so the first thing my son said to me was, "This has to be from God." And he's like, "I don't know why I'm so emotional right now." And I knew value who he was seeing, that he was valuable, that he was a person that is so special, and it's a day of recognizing that he's special. And we should do that all the time with our kids, but it's a day to recognize he's special. And so I told him, I said, "Nathan, this is a day that signifies a transition for you, because you're no longer a little boy anymore, and you are becoming a man." And the Bible talks about blessings that fathers gave to their sons. So Abraham gave a blessing, prayed a blessing over his son Isaac, and Isaac did the same thing for his sons Jacob and Esau. And I told Nathan, I want to have a special prayer with you here, and have a special a prayer of blessing and God's guidance in your life. And so we knelt down on the platform in the tree house, and we had that prayer. And it was just a special moment to realizing that my son's becoming a man, and God has great plans for him. And so we had that prayer. And then I had a gift bag, and in it I had a NASB Bible for him, a special Bible for him, and talked about the importance of the Bible, that Bible. My son reads the Bible often, but talked about the Bible. And I had another gift book for him, and then a letter in there that was from his mom, my wife, Jennifer. And so he was able to, I said, you can read this now, you can read it later, anytime today you want to. He's like, "No, I want to read it now." And so he opened up the letter, and there's a beautiful 3-page letter in there from Jennifer to him about how he's been a blessing in her life, and just things to keep in mind as you mature and grow and change in your life. And so we had a great conversation after that for about a half hour. And it was just a very special, meaningful time for us. And one of the things I told Nathan was that um, I, I said, even though you didn't see me through this whole experience, because it took about 4 hours actually, from the start of it to the end of it is 4 hours. I say, even though you didn't see me when you were going through this experience, I said, I was watching you or knew where you're at the whole time. And it's the same way that God is watching out for us, even though we don't sense that He's present with us. We don't see Him, but He's still there. He still knows where we're at every step of our day, every step of our lives. I share this with you because it's something you can do with your son at, maybe they're not 16, or maybe they're already 18 or 21, or maybe they're 10. But just figuring out a time, and maybe you're in a place where you're not really of a spiritual focus. You can still do a rite of passage into manhood with your son without the spiritual focus, so that your son knows that, hey, this is a transition period for my life, and there are certain things that my dad has been speaking into my life that are important and that I need to think about as I move forward in growing up. And so I hope that you get some inspiration from this. It was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had in my entire life. And I just wanted to share it because I know that there'll be some of you out there that will hear this and say, I have to do something like that for my son. I have to do something like that for my daughter when she gets ready to transition to womanhood. I just want to encourage you to do that. You won't regret it, and it's a day that you and your son or daughter will never forget. So blessings to you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this.